The rain pelted against the windshield like tiny bullets, each drop magnified by the airport's floodlights. My fingers trembled against the steering wheel as I squinted through the downpour, searching for a face I'd never seen before. The wipers squeaked rhythmically, a metronomic reminder of how late I was running. "Just look for a tall businessman with dark hair wearing a navy suit," my sister Ellie had said, her voice crackling through my phone speaker. "He'll be standing at international arrivals with a black leather briefcase. You can't miss him." Easy for her to say. She wasn't the one sitting in her beat-up Honda outside JFK at midnight, doing yet another favor that Ellie would probably never return. But that was our relationship. I was always the responsible one, always picking up her slack. Tonight, it was picking up her boss's important client because she'd come down with something. I knew that something was probably a date with that bartender she'd been talking about for weeks. I rubbed my tired eyes, the exhaustion from my double shift at the diner still clinging to me like the smell of French fries on my uniform. I hadn't even had time to change. God. I hoped Ellie's fancy client wouldn't mind being picked up by someone in a ketchup-stained apron and jeans. The airport was strangely quiet for a Friday night. Through the glass doors of the terminal, I could see a few stragglers from recently arrived flights, their faces drawn with travel fatigue. I checked my phone again. 12:17 a.m. The flight from Milan had landed 20 minutes ago. He should be out any minute now. I turned up the heat in my car, trying to chase away the chill that had settled in my bones. Life hadn't exactly gone as planned for me. At 27, I was supposed to have finished my nursing degree, not dropped out to support my sister after our parents died. I wasn't supposed to be working 60-hour weeks at a greasy diner, coming home to an empty apartment with bills I could barely pay. But here I was, doing it all while Ellie pursued her dream job at that fancy consulting firm, rarely remembering to call except when she needed something. A figure emerged from the terminal, and my heart skipped. Tall, dark hair, navy suit. But as he turned, I saw he was much older, greeting a woman who rushed toward him with open arms. Not my pickup. Then I saw him. He stood just beyond the sliding glass doors, a striking silhouette against the bright lights of the terminal. Tall, yes. Dark hair, absolutely. Navy suit, impeccable. But Ellie had failed to mention how the suit would fit him like it had been poured onto his frame, or how his presence would command attention even in a crowded airport. He wasn't just looking around. He was surveying, calculating, his gaze sharp and assessing. Though he appeared to be alone, I noticed a broad-shouldered man hovering several feet behind him. Attention vigilantly sweeping the area, I swallowed hard and reached for my phone to text Ellie's template message. "Good evening, Mr. Milano. I'm Ellie's sister, here to drive you to your hotel." My thumb hovered over the send button, but something made me hesitate. There was an intensity about this man that made my skin prickle with, not quite fear, but awareness, like standing too close to an electrical fence. Before I could press send, he stepped into the rain, not bothering with an umbrella. The water darkened his hair, droplets sliding down his sharp jawline as he scanned the pickup area. His eyes, even from this distance, I could see they were piercing, swept over my car once, dismissed it, then came back with focused intention. My phone dinged with a message from Ellie. "Client's name is Adrian Milano. Be nice. This account is important." The man was walking directly toward my car now, the second man trailing behind him carrying what looked like a sleek briefcase. I quickly rolled down my window, forcing a professional smile. "Mr. Milano?" I called out. His stride didn't falter as he approached, eyes narrowing slightly as he took in my appearance. Without a word, he opened the back door and slid in, bringing with him the scent of expensive cologne and rainwater. The other man stored the briefcase in the trunk before taking position in a black SUV that had silently pulled up behind my car. "You're not Ellie," he said finally, his voice a low timbre with the barest hint of an accent I couldn't place. It wasn't a question, but an observation. "No, I'm her sister, Emma." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "Ellie's sick tonight, so she asked me to pick you up instead. I hope that's all right." Something flashed across his face. Curiosity, perhaps, or suspicion. He didn't respond immediately, instead pulling out a sleek black phone and typing something quickly. The silence stretched between us, uncomfortable and thick with unspoken assessment. "The plaza, I assume?" I asked, trying to fill the void with professional courtesy. His eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, dark and unreadable. "Yes. Just one word." but it carried weight. Authority. A man used to commands being followed without question. I pulled away from the curb, acutely aware of his presence in my back seat. The black SUV followed closely behind as we merged into the late-night traffic. I noticed him scanning my car's interior, taking in the coffee-stained cup holders, the small crystal angel hanging from my rearview mirror, the worn upholstery. His gaze lingered on my hands gripping the steering wheel, on the small tattoo of a swallow on my wrist, a memory of freedom I'd once promised myself. "How long have you known I was coming, Emma?" His question cut through the silence, my name sounding foreign on his tongue. "Just a few hours," I answered honestly. "Ellie called me after her shift. She doesn't usually tell me about her work until she needs something." A hint of a smile touched his lips, there and gone in an instant. "Interesting." We hit a pothole, and I winced as my car groaned in protest. "Sorry about that. And about the car. Ellie usually arranges for a service, but there wasn't time. I prefer authentic experiences," he replied, his gaze fixed on the passing city lights. "Your sister has told me a lot about her life in New York. Though strangely, she's never mentioned having a sister." My hands tightened on the wheel. Typical Ellie, erasing me from her narrative. "We're not very close these days, and yet you're here, doing her bidding at midnight." His observation was casual, but penetrating. Rain continued to drum against the roof as we crossed into Manhattan, the skyline glittering through the downpour. I felt his eyes on me occasionally, studying me like I was a puzzle he found mildly interesting. "Tell me," he said after several minutes of silence. "What do you know about me, Emma?" The way he asked made me feel like my answer mattered more than it should. "Just that you're an important client of my sister's firm. From Milan. That's all Ellie told me." He made a sound that might have been a laugh, though there was no humor in it. "Is that why you didn't check my identification? You picked up a stranger at an airport in the middle of the night based on a vague description and the word of a sister who doesn't even acknowledge your existence." My cheeks burned with embarrassment and something else, the first flicker of unease. I recognized you from Ellie's description." "Did you?" His voice dropped lower, a dangerous edge to it now. "Or did you just see what you expected to see?" I glanced in the rearview mirror again, meeting his gaze. There was something predatory in those dark eyes now, something that made my heart hammer against my ribs. "What do you mean?" "I mean, Emma," he said, leaning forward slightly, "that I am not Adrian Milano." The world seemed to tilt sideways. My grip on the steering wheel tightened as I processed his words. Not Adrian Milano. Not Ellie's client. Then who? "Pull over," he commanded, his tone leaving no room for argument. I signaled and guided my car to the curb, my mind racing through possibilities, each more terrifying than the last. The black SUV pulled up directly beside us, blocking my driver's side door. Trapped. "I don't understand," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "If you're not Mr. Milano, then who are you? Why did you get in my car?" He studied me for a long moment, as though deciding something critical. "My name is Dominic Russo, and you, Emma, have made quite an interesting mistake tonight." The name meant nothing to me, but the way he said it, as if I should recognize it, as if it should make me afraid, sent a chill down my spine. "I'm so sorry for the confusion," I stammered, professional facade crumbling. "I can take you back to the airport, or drop you anywhere you'd like." "That won't be necessary," he interrupted smoothly. "You see, I was expecting someone to pick me up, just not Ellie's sister." His lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Fate has an interesting sense of humor, doesn't it? The rain hammered harder against the windshield, creating a cocoon of white noise around us. Through the glass, I could see the silhouette of the man from the SUV standing in the downpour, watching, waiting. "I don't believe in fate," I said, surprising myself with my defiance. Dominic's smile widened, becoming genuine for the first time. "You will." My phone buzzed suddenly, startling me. A text from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "Adrian Milano checked into the plaza 30 minutes ago, took a cab from the airport." Before I could process this information, Dominic plucked the phone from my hand, read the message, and slipped it into his pocket. "It appears we have a problem, Emma," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Someone wants me to believe I've been forgotten at the airport, and now you've picked me up instead of the man you were sent to collect." He leaned forward, close enough that I could feel his breath against my ear. "Tell me, do you think that's coincidence? I shivered, not from cold, but from the implication in his words. I don't know what you're talking about. I made a mistake, that's all. Perhaps. He sat back, regarding me with new interest. Or perhaps you're an excellent actress. Either way, you've altered both our evenings considerably. The rain began to ease, the torrent reducing to a gentle patter. Dominic glanced at his watch, an elegant timepiece that probably cost more than my yearly rent, and made a decision. Here's what's going to happen, Emma. You're going to drive us to my hotel. I'm going to make some calls. And until I determine exactly what game is being played tonight, you're going to stay where I can see you. That's kidnapping, I whispered, the first real tendrils of fear wrapping around my heart. No, he countered, his voice soft but laced with steel. That's protection. Because if someone arranged for you to pick me up by mistake, they did so for a reason, and until I know that reason, your safety is now my concern. I wanted to protest, to demand he return my phone and let me go. But as I met his gaze in the mirror again, I saw something beyond the dangerous exterior. A flicker of genuine concern that momentarily disarmed me. Drive, he said simply. And against all logic, against every instinct for self-preservation, I put the car in gear and pulled back into traffic, heading deeper into the city with a stranger who was definitely not my sister's client, and who seemed to think we were both now pawns in some dangerous game I didn't understand. As we drove in tense silence, one thought kept circling in my mind. How had a simple favor for my sister turned into what felt like the beginning of a nightmare? Or was it something else entirely? Because despite my fear, despite the alarm bells ringing in my head, I couldn't shake the feeling that destiny had just dealt me a hand I wasn't prepared to play, but one that might change everything. Block 2. The hotel wasn't the plaza. Dominic directed me through the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan, guiding me away from the tourist-heavy areas toward the Upper East Side. We pulled up to a discreet building with an understated awning and a doorman who snapped to attention the moment our car approached. The black SUV remained our shadow, never more than a few car lengths behind us. The Garrick, Dominic said, breaking the silence that had stretched between us. More private than the plaza. Fewer cameras, fewer questions. My stomach tightened. The Garrick was notorious for its discretion, catering to celebrities and the ultra-wealthy who valued anonymity above all else. The kind of place where staff were paid handsomely to forget what they saw and heard. The doorman approached my side of the car, opening my door with practiced efficiency. The rain had stopped, but the night air remained heavy with moisture, clinging to my skin as I stepped out. I was painfully aware of how out of place I looked, still in my diner uniform, exhaustion etched into every line of my face. "Miss?" The doorman acknowledged with a slight nod. No judgment in his eyes. Clearly, Dominic Russo was the kind of guest for whom exceptions were made, questions unasked. Dominic emerged from the back seat, buttoning his suit jacket with a casual elegance that made the simple gesture look rehearsed. He placed a hand at the small of my back, the touch light, but unmistakably possessive. "My bags will be arriving shortly," he told the doorman, who nodded and signaled to a bellhop waiting in the shadows of the entrance. I wanted to run, to break away from his touch, to disappear into the labyrinth of the city where I'd spent my entire life. But the man from the SUV, who I now recognized as security or a bodyguard, had positioned himself strategically between me and the street, and there was something else keeping me rooted in place. Curiosity, mingled with a strange sense that leaving now would be more dangerous than staying. The lobby of the Garrick was a study in understated luxury. Dark wood, soft lighting, and staff who moved with the quiet efficiency of those accustomed to serving the powerful. Not a single head turned as Dominic guided me across the marble floor to a private elevator. His hand remained at my back, warm and firm, a constant reminder of his control over the situation, over me. "Why am I here?" I finally asked as the elevator doors closed, sealing us in together. His bodyguard had remained in the lobby, which both relieved and unsettled me. Dominic's dark eyes studied my face for a moment, before he answered, "Because I don't believe in coincidences, Emma. And neither should you." The elevator opened directly into a penthouse suite that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows, showcasing the glittering city skyline. Furniture that looked both antique and impossibly comfortable, and an atmosphere of cultivated tranquility that seemed at odds with the tension vibrating between us. "Make yourself comfortable," he said, removing his suit jacket and draping it over a chair. "This may take some time. I can't stay here," I protested. finding my voice at last. I have work tomorrow. An early shift. People will notice if I'm missing. A smile touched his lips. A small, dangerous thing. Will they? Your sister, perhaps? The one who sends you on midnight errands but doesn't mention you to her colleagues? His words stung with their accuracy. Ellie wouldn't notice my absence until she needed something else. My manager at the diner would be annoyed, but not concerned enough to file a report. The truth was, my life had become so small, so focused on survival, that my disappearance might go unremarked for days. You don't know anything about me, I said, the words coming out weaker than I intended. I know enough. Dominic moved to a bar nestled in the corner of the vast living area and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid. I know you're loyal, perhaps to a fault. I know you're struggling, financially, emotionally. I know you're alone. He returned, offering me one of the glasses. When I didn't take it, he placed it on the coffee table and sat in an armchair, watching me with those penetrating eyes. What I don't know, he continued, swirling his drink thoughtfully, is whether you're involved in this little charade or merely a convenient pawn. I told you I made a mistake. I was supposed to pick up Adrian Milano. Yes, Adrian Milano, he interrupted, his tone suddenly sharp. A man I've never met, from a company I've never heard of, supposedly arriving on the same flight as me, at the same time, matching roughly the same description. He took a sip of his drink. Tell me, Emma, do you believe that's possible? When he put it that way, it did sound suspicious. A cold feeling washed over me as I considered the implications. You think Ellie set this up? That's insane. Why would she? I don't know your sister, Dominic said, his voice softening slightly. But I do know that someone wanted to track my movements tonight. Someone knew I was arriving on that flight, knew what I looked like, and arranged for a car to be waiting. A car driven by someone who wouldn't recognize that I wasn't their intended pickup. The weight of his words settled over me like a shroud. Who are you? I asked, barely above a whisper. He regarded me for a long moment, seeming to weigh how much to reveal. I'm a businessman with interests in various industries. Some people find my success threatening. The way he said it told me there was much more to the story. The suite suddenly felt too small, the air too thick with unspoken dangers. Please, I said. I need my phone back. I need to call Ellie, to understand what's happening. No. His response was immediate, brooking no argument. If your sister is involved, warning her would be unwise. If she's not, calling her could put her in danger. My legs felt weak, and I finally sank onto the edge of the sofa, as far from him as possible. Danger from what? From who? That's what I intend to find out. He finished his drink and set the glass aside. In the meantime, you'll stay here, where I can ensure your safety. I'm not staying the night in a hotel room with a stranger, I said, summoning what little courage I had left. A ghost of a smile played across his lips. This suite has 3 bedrooms, Emma. Your virtue is safe from me. The smile vanished, replaced by a steely resolve. But you are not leaving my sight until I'm satisfied you're not involved in this situation. Before I could argue further, a discreet knock sounded at the door. Dominic moved with surprising speed, positioning himself between me and the entrance. He pressed a button on a panel near the door, and a small screen showed his bodyguard standing in the hallway. Dominic opened the door, and the man entered, carrying both the briefcase I'd seen earlier and a sleek laptop. They exchanged a few words in what sounded like Italian, too low and rapid for me to catch. The bodyguard's eyes flicked to me once, assessing, before returning to Dominic. He handed over the laptop and departed without another word. Dominic placed the computer on a desk near the windows and began typing. The city lights cast his profile in sharp relief. The strong jaw, the straight nose, the intensity of concentration. Despite everything, I couldn't help noticing how handsome he was, in a dangerous, untouchable way. You must be hungry, he said suddenly, without looking up from the screen. The mention of food made my stomach growl embarrassingly loud. I hadn't eaten since my lunch break at the diner, nearly 12 hours ago. I'll order something, he continued, reaching for a phone on the desk. Preferences? The casual domesticity of the question in the midst of this surreal situation nearly made me laugh. I'm not hungry, I lied. He glanced up, his eyes seeing through the deception effortlessly. Don't lie to me, Emma. It's pointless and unnecessary. Something in his tone made me bristle. Fine. A burger and fries. And a chocolate milkshake. I'd chosen the most mundane, unfancy food I could think of, half expecting him to curl his lip in disdain. Instead, he simply nodded and made the call, ordering exactly what I'd requested, along with something in Italian for himself. While he was occupied with the call, I took the opportunity to look around, seeking exits, weapons, anything that might help me if this situation deteriorated. The suite had a terrace, but we were at least 20 floors up. The bathroom might have a window, but likely nothing large enough to climb through. I was well and truly trapped. Your paranoia is showing, Dominic commented after hanging up the phone. I'm not going to hurt you, Emma. You've essentially kidnapped me, I pointed out. I've protected you, he countered smoothly. There's a difference. Protected me from what? He closed the laptop and turned his full attention to me. That's the question, isn't it? Who would want to know my movements badly enough to arrange this elaborate scenario? And why use you to do it? The way he said you made it sound like I was someone special, someone chosen. It sent an unwelcome shiver down my spine. I told you, it was just a mix-up. Ellie asked me to pick up her client. I saw someone who matched the description. End of story. Is it? He moved closer, sitting on the coffee table directly in front of me, our knees almost touching. Tell me about your sister, Emma. What exactly does she do at this consulting firm? She's some kind of analyst, corporate stuff. I don't really know the details. The truth was, Ellie shared very little about her job with me, beyond complaints about her hours and occasional boasts about important clients. And how long has she worked there? About 2 years. I frowned, trying to remember exactly when Ellie had started at Morrison & Keyes. Maybe a little less. Morrison & Keyes, Dominic repeated, his expression unreadable. Interesting. Something in his tone made my skin prickle. Do you know them? I know of them. He stood abruptly, pacing toward the windows. They have a reputation for handling difficult situations for their clients, corporate espionage, competitive intelligence, information that isn't readily available through conventional channels. My mouth went dry. You're saying my sister works for some kind of corporate spy agency? That's ridiculous. Is it? How much do you really know about Ellie's life these days? His voice was gentle now, almost sympathetic. People change, Emma. They adapt to new circumstances, new opportunities. Sometimes they become someone their family wouldn't recognize. And I wanted to defend Ellie, to insist she was still the same girl who had shared my bedroom growing up, who had cried on my shoulder after her first heartbreak. But the truth was, I barely knew my sister anymore. She had transformed herself after our parents' death, reinvented herself as someone sleek and ambitious, someone who looked at me with a mixture of pity and impatience, as though I were a reminder of a past she was desperate to escape. A knock at the door announced the arrival of our food. Dominic answered, tipping the waiter generously before wheeling the cart into the room himself. The smell of food, real, hearty food, made my resolve weaken further. Eat, he said, arranging the plates on the coffee table. You need your strength. I eyed the burger suspiciously. Are you going to drug me? A genuine laugh escaped him, transforming his face completely. For a moment he looked younger, almost carefree. If I wanted to drug you, Emma, I wouldn't waste a perfectly good burger to do it. Despite everything, I found myself smiling back. I took a tentative bite of the burger, which was ridiculously good. Nothing like the frozen patties we served at the diner. The fries were crisp and salty, the milkshake thick and rich. I tried to eat slowly, with dignity, but hunger won out over pride. Dominic watched me eat with an expression I couldn't quite decipher, curiosity, perhaps, or amusement. He picked at his own meal, some kind of pasta dish that smelled divine, but his focus remained on me. Why did you really pick me up tonight? He asked suddenly. The truth, Emma. I swallowed a mouthful of milkshake. I told you. No. He cut me off. Not what you've been telling yourself, the truth. What made you really look at me, specifically, out of all the people exiting that terminal? The question caught me off guard. I set down the glass, thinking back to that moment at the airport. There had been something about him, hadn't there? Something that had drawn my attention even before I'd matched him to Ellie's description. I don't know, I admitted finally. You just stood out. Like you owned the place, like the rules that applied to everyone else didn't touch you. Satisfaction flickered in his eyes. as though I'd confirmed something he already suspected. Perception. It's a rare quality these days. Most people see only what's on the surface, what they're meant to see. And what am I supposed to be seeing now? I asked. He leaned forward, his eyes capturing mine. The truth beneath the convenient story your sister fed you. The reality that you've stepped into something much larger than a simple airport pickup. And the fact that, as of tonight, your life has changed irrevocably. A chill ran through me at his words. I don't want my life to change. I just want to go home. Home, he repeated, the word sounding foreign on his tongue. To your empty apartment? To your thankless job? To a sister who uses you when it's convenient? His voice softened. Is that really what you want, Emma? Or is it just what you've settled for? His words cut deeper than they should have, exposing nerves I thought I'd numbed long ago. Before I could respond, his phone rang. A sharp, insistent sound that broke the strange intimacy that had formed between us. He answered with a curt word in Italian, his expression hardening as he listened to whoever was on the other end. The conversation was brief, his responses monosyllabic. But by the time he hung up, a new tension had settled over him. We have a problem, he said, slipping the phone into his pocket. It seems your sister has disappeared. My heart stuttered. What do you mean disappeared? I mean, Dominic said, his eyes never leaving mine, that when my people went to speak with her, her apartment was empty. No signs of a struggle, but clear evidence of a hasty departure. Drawers left open, closet half emptied, almost as though she knew someone would be looking for her. I finished, a cold dread settling in my stomach. Dominic nodded, watching my reaction carefully. The question now is whether she was running from me or from someone else entirely. I stood up, my appetite gone. I need to find her. I need to make sure she's okay, and you will, he said, his voice carrying an authority that brooked no argument. But not alone, because if I'm right about what's happening, whoever arranged for you to pick me up tonight will be looking for both of you now. He moved toward me, closing the distance between us until I could feel the heat radiating from his body, smell the subtle notes of his cologne mingled with the scent of rain that still clung to him. Like it or not, Emma, he said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Your fate is now tied to mine, and I protect what's mine, whether they want my protection or not. The possessiveness in his voice should have frightened me, should have sent me running for the door. Instead, I found myself rooted in place, caught in the gravity of his presence, a strange flutter of anticipation replacing the fear in my chest. In the span of a few hours, my carefully constructed world had shattered, revealing glimpses of something darker, more dangerous, and infinitely more alive than anything I'd experienced in years. Sleep eluded me that night, even in the luxurious guest bedroom Dominic had assigned me. The sheets were softer than any I'd ever felt, the mattress perfectly supportive, but my mind refused to quiet. I kept replaying the evening's events, searching for clues I might have missed, explanations that made sense of Ellie's disappearance. Dawn found me standing at the window, watching the city slowly awaken. New York looked different from 20 stories up, more orderly, less chaotic, less real. A soft knock at the door startled me from my thoughts. Emma, Dominic's voice, already alert despite the early hour. Are you awake? I opened the door to find him impeccably dressed in another perfectly tailored suit, this one charcoal gray. He looked refreshed, as though the night's events had barely touched him. I, on the other hand, was still in yesterday's uniform, my hair a tangled mess, dark circles undoubtedly shadowing my eyes. We need to move, he said, his gaze sweeping over me assessingly. I've arranged for some clothes for you. They're in the living room. Move where? I asked, voice still rough with exhaustion. Somewhere safer. His expression revealed nothing. We've been in one place too long. The living room had been transformed into a command center overnight. 3 men I hadn't seen before worked quietly at laptops, while Dominic's bodyguard from yesterday stood near the door. On the coffee table lay several shopping bags from high-end boutiques. These should fit, Dominic said, gesturing to the bags. The bathroom is yours for 30 minutes. It wasn't a request. I gathered the bags and retreated to the massive marble bathroom, where I found toiletries laid out with military precision. Everything a woman might need, from high-end shampoo to makeup. The shower helped clear my head, the hot water washing away some of the previous night's tension. I examined the clothes Dominic had provided. Designer jeans that fit perfectly, a cashmere sweater in deep burgundy, Italian leather boots, even undergarments with tags still attached. How he'd guessed my sizes so accurately was a question I didn't want to contemplate. When I emerged, feeling more human, but increasingly unsettled by the evident resources at Dominic's disposal, he was ending a phone call. His eyes swept over me, lingering for a moment before he nodded with approval. "Better," he said simply. "We leave in 10 minutes. "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening," I insisted, finding courage I didn't know I possessed. "Where's my sister? Who are you really? And why am I still here?" The men at the laptops paused momentarily, then resumed their work with studied concentration. Dominic moved closer to me, lowering his voice. "Your sister appears to have connections to people who want information about my business dealings. Information worth killing for." His voice was matter of fact, as though discussing the weather. Whether she's working with them willingly or under coercion is unclear. "That's insane," I whispered, though a knot of dread was forming in my stomach. "Ellie wouldn't—" "People rarely show their true nature to those they love," Dominic interrupted gently. "As for who I am," he hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "I manage various enterprises across Europe and North America. Some legitimate, some less so. My arrival in New York was meant to be confidential." "You're a criminal," I said flatly. A hint of a smile touched his lips. "The line between criminal and businessman is often a matter of perspective, Emma." "And me?" I pressed. "Why am I still here? Why not just let me go?" "Because whoever arranged last night's mistake now knows you're with me instead of Adrian Milano." His eyes hardened. "They'll assume you've told me everything. About the setup, about their plans. They'll want to silence you, either to protect themselves or to hurt me." He stepped closer still, and I won't allow that. The protective intensity in his voice sent an involuntary shiver through me, not entirely from fear. "What about the police?" I suggested weakly. This time his smile was cold. "Police involvement would complicate matters for everyone, including your sister. My way is cleaner." Before I could argue further, his phone buzzed. He checked the screen, his expression darkening. "Time to go," he said, all business now. He turned to his men. "Finish here. Usual protocol." He guided me toward the door with a hand at the small of my back, that same possessive touch from yesterday. The bodyguard led us to a service elevator I hadn't known existed. "Where are we going?" I asked as we descended. "Somewhere my enemies won't look for us," Dominic replied cryptically. The garage beneath the hotel was dimly lit and eerily quiet. Instead of the black SUV from last night, a nondescript sedan waited, engine already running. Dominic opened the rear door for me, then slid in beside me. His bodyguard took the wheel. "Your sister has made 3 calls since disappearing," Dominic said as we merged into morning traffic. 2 to burner phones we can't trace. The 3rd to Morrison and Keys. "You're having her calls tracked?" I asked, horrified. "I have resources," he said simply. "The question is why she'd risk calling her employer if she's running from them." A sick feeling washed over me. Unless she's not running from them, unless she's running with them. Dominic's eyes met mine, approval in their depths. "Precisely." The city streamed past as we headed toward the Brooklyn Bridge. I watched the familiar landmarks recede, feeling as though I was being carried further from my real life with every passing block. "There's something you're not telling me," I said finally. "This isn't just about business information. No one goes to these lengths for corporate secrets." Dominic studied me for a long moment. "You're perceptive. It's refreshing." He seemed to weigh his next words carefully. "Your sister's firm has connections to a family that once had disagreements with mine. Old wounds, never properly healed." "A family? You mean—" The realization hit me suddenly. "You're actually mafia, not just a criminal. Organized crime." "I prefer organization," he corrected mildly. "But yes, my family has controlled certain interests in Milan for generations. The Castellani family once challenged that control. We thought that matter resolved decades ago." "And now?" I prompted. "Now it seems they're making a move in America, using Morrison and Keys as a front for their operations." His jaw tightened. "Using your sister to gather intelligence." I shook my head, disbelieving. "Ellie's just an analyst. She accessed files on my businesses, my properties, my security protocols." He cut in. "All within the last month. Either she knew exactly what she was doing, or someone was using her credentials. The implication hit me like a physical blow. Either my sister was knowingly working with criminals, or she was in danger. Neither possibility was comforting. We crossed the bridge into Brooklyn, the Manhattan skyline shrinking behind us. After several turns and what seemed like intentional detours, we pulled up to a restored brownstone on a quiet, tree-lined street. "We'll be safe here temporarily," Dominic said, helping me from the car. "The property belongs to a shell corporation. It can't be traced to me." The interior of the brownstone was a startling contrast to the Garrick's opulence. Warm, homey, with comfortable furniture and family photographs. Actual family photographs, I realized with shock. A younger Dominic with an older man who shared his features. Dominic in his 20s, arm around a smiling woman, children I didn't recognize. "Your family?" I asked, studying a particular photo where Dominic looked carefree. Younger in spirit than mere years. My parents. My sister. A shadow crossed his face, before things changed. There was history there. Pain I couldn't access. Before I could ask more, his phone rang again. This time the call was brief but clearly significant. When he hung up, his expression was grim. "They found your sister," he said. My heart leapt. "Where? Is she okay?" "JFK, attempting to board a flight to Milan." His eyes never left mine. "With a man identified as Franco Castellani." The name meant nothing to me, but the implication was clear. "She's working with them." "It appears so." His voice softened slightly. "I'm sorry, Emma." "Don't be," I said, surprising myself with the hardness in my voice. "Ellie made her choice. I just need to understand why." Dominic nodded, watching me with new respect. "We'll find out. My men are bringing them to a secure location for questioning." The casual way he mentioned what was clearly an abduction should have horrified me. Instead, I felt a strange calm descending. Perhaps it was shock, or perhaps something deeper, a recognition that the rules of my world had fundamentally changed. "Will you hurt her?" I asked, needing to know the boundaries of this new reality. "That depends entirely on her," Dominic replied honestly. "I don't harm women as a rule, but betrayal requires consequences." A shiver ran through me at his words. "And me? What consequences do I face for my unwitting role in all this?" He moved closer, his gaze intense. "You're not responsible for your sister's choices, Emma, but you are now involved in a situation from which there's no simple exit." His hand lifted to brush a strand of hair from my face, the touch surprisingly gentle. "Your life as you knew it is over. The question is, what you want your new life to be." The implication hung between us, heavy with possibilities both frightening and strangely exhilarating. In the space of 24 hours, I'd gone from an invisible woman leading a half-lived life to someone at the center of a dangerous game, seen, truly seen, perhaps for the first time in years. "I want the truth," I said finally. "From Ellie. From you. About everything." A small, approving smile touched his lips. "Then that's what you'll have." He checked his watch. "They'll be arriving within the hour. I suggest you prepare yourself. Family reunions can be emotional." As he moved away to make another call, I found myself watching him. The confident set of his shoulders, the fluid grace with which he moved, the aura of absolute control that surrounded him. I should have been planning my escape, should have been horrified by my complicity in whatever was about to happen. Instead, I felt more awake, more alive than I had in years. The dull gray of my existence had been replaced by vivid color, dangerous and intoxicating. And standing at the center of this transformation was Dominic Russo, a man who had claimed me as his to protect, his to keep. A man who, despite everything rational within me, I was beginning to trust. They brought Ellie in blindfolded, her wrists secured in front of her with plastic zip ties. The sight of my sister, disheveled, frightened, yet somehow still maintaining that air of superiority that had defined her since our parents' death, sent conflicting waves of relief and anger through me. The man who had been with her, Franco Castellani, I presumed, was taken to another part of the brownstone. I caught only a glimpse of him, tall, blonde, handsome in a polished way that seemed at odds with the circumstances. He walked with his head high, unafraid, his eyes scanning his surroundings with calculated interest. Dominic directed his men to bring Ellie to a study at the back of the house, a warm room lined with bookshelves, comfortable leather furniture, and a large desk that dominated one wall. It felt oddly intimate for what was essentially an interrogation. "Sit," Dominic commanded, his voice colder than I'd heard it before. One of his men removed Ellie's blindfold. She blinked rapidly, adjusting to the light, before her eyes landed on me. Emma? Confusion, then fear, then calculation flashed across her face in rapid succession. What are you doing here? Are you okay? Did they hurt you? The concern seemed genuine, but something in her tone rang false, as though she were performing concern rather than feeling it. I'm fine, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. No thanks to you. Dominic dismissed his men with a subtle gesture, leaving the three of us alone. He leaned against the desk, observing our reunion with clinical interest. Emma, Ellie said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. You need to get away from him. He's dangerous. These people are criminals. Stop, I interrupted, surprising both her and myself with my authority. Just stop, Ellie. I know what you did. She flinched slightly before her expression hardened. You don't know anything. I know you sent me to pick up a man who doesn't exist, I countered. I know you've been accessing files on Dominic's businesses. I know you were trying to flee the country with Franco Castellani. Ellie's eyes darted to Dominic, who watched the exchange impassively. He's manipulating you, Emma. That's what he does. He's a monster. His whole family are monsters. Dominic smiled faintly, seemingly amused by the accusation. The Castellani perspective is always entertaining, if somewhat lacking in self-awareness. Castellani? I repeated, looking between them. Ellie, what is he talking about? My sister fell silent, her lips pressed into a thin line. Your sister hasn't been entirely forthcoming about her background, Dominic supplied, pushing himself away from the desk to circle behind Ellie's chair. Morrison & Keyes isn't just a consulting firm. It's a front for Castellani operations in North America, and your sister isn't just an analyst. She's Franco Castellani's wife. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Wife? That's not... Ellie isn't married. 3 years this December, Dominic corrected gently. A small ceremony in Milan. Very exclusive. I stared at my sister, this woman I thought I knew, searching for any sign of denial. There was none. Why? I whispered, the single word containing a universe of hurt. Ellie lifted her chin defiantly. You wouldn't understand. After Mom and Dad died, I was drowning, working 2 jobs just to keep us afloat while you chased that nursing degree that was never going to happen. A bitter edge crept into her voice. Then I met Franco at a corporate event. He saw something in me. Potential, a future beyond serving drinks and filing paperwork. So you married into the mafia? I asked incredulously. I married into power, she corrected sharply, into a family that actually gets things done, instead of just talking about rules and ethics while the world burns around them. I recognized the rhetoric. Echoes of arguments we'd had after our parents' accident, when the insurance company had used legal loopholes to deny their claim, when the justice system had failed to hold the drunk driver accountable. And what was I in all this? I asked, a hollow feeling spreading in my chest. Just a convenient cover for your new life? Something like regret flickered across her face. You were safe, Emma. Uninvolved. I kept you separate from all this deliberately. Until last night, Dominic interjected, his voice dangerously soft, when you dangled her in front of me like bait. Ellie's gaze snapped to him, hatred burning in her eyes. That wasn't supposed to happen. She was supposed to pick up a business associate of the firm, a real person, just not the one we told her to look for. She wasn't supposed to find you, but she did, Dominic said, a strange note of satisfaction in his voice. Fate has a curious sense of humor, doesn't it? It wasn't fate, Ellie spat. It was a mistake, a stupid coincidence. Perhaps, he conceded, though his expression suggested he believed otherwise. But here we are. Your sister, now deeply involved in a conflict she knew nothing about. Your husband, currently explaining to my associates why he thought infiltrating my organizations was worth the inevitable consequences. He leaned down, his face close to hers. And you, about to tell me exactly what information you've gathered and who you've shared it with. Ellie's defiance crumbled slightly at the mention of her husband. If you hurt Franco, that depends entirely on his cooperation, Dominic cut in smoothly, and yours. I watched this exchange with a strange detachment, as though observing strangers. The sister I thought I knew had been living a double life for years, had married into a criminal family, had been lying to me with every interaction. The ground beneath my reality had shifted completely. I want to talk to my sister alone, I said suddenly. Both Dominic and Ellie looked at me with surprise. Please, I added, meeting Dominic's assessing gaze. 5 minutes. He studied me for a long moment before nodding once. 5 minutes. I'll be right outside. The warning in his tone was clear. He would be listening, and he would intervene if necessary. When the door closed behind him, Ellie sagged in her chair, the performance of strength evaporating. Emma, listen to me. Whatever he's told you. No, I interrupted, moving closer to her. You listen. Our parents are gone. You're the only family I have left, and you've been lying to me for years, living some secret life, married to a man I've never even heard of, while watching me struggle paycheck to paycheck. My voice broke slightly. Do you know how many nights I lay awake worrying about rent, about keeping our family home, about failing the promise I made to Mom and Dad to finish nursing school? Guilt flashed across her face. I sent you money. Crumbs, I corrected bitterly. Just enough to keep me dependent, but not enough to change anything. Meanwhile, you were what? Living in luxury? Playing mafia princess? It wasn't like that, she protested. Franco's family, they have expectations, rules. I couldn't just save it. I cut her off. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell Dominic everything he wants to know. Everything. Because right now, he's the only reason you and your husband aren't in the bottom of the East River. Ellie stared at me, shock evident on her face. You can't be serious. You're siding with him? After he kidnapped you? He protected me, I corrected, the realization solidifying as I spoke. Which is more than you ever did. He's a criminal, Emma. So is your husband, I shot back. At least Dominic has been honest with me. The irony of defending a man I'd met just 24 hours ago wasn't lost on me, yet something deep inside told me I could trust Dominic Russo. At least more than I could trust the sister who'd been deceiving me for years. What has he done to you? Ellie whispered, searching my face. This isn't you, Emma. Perhaps she was right. The Emma of 2 days ago would never have found herself in this situation, never would have aligned herself with someone like Dominic. But that Emma had been half alive, sleepwalking through existence. The woman standing before Ellie now felt awakened, her senses sharpened by danger and betrayal. You don't know me anymore, I said quietly. Maybe you never did. I moved toward the door, then paused with my hand on the knob. One last thing. The house. Our parents' house. Did you sell it? Confusion crossed her face. What? No, it's still in both our names. Why would I? Because you've lied about everything else, I said simply, then opened the door. Dominic stood just outside, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. He took in my expression with a single glance, then nodded slightly, as though I'd confirmed something he already suspected. She's all yours, I said, stepping aside to let him pass. As he moved back into the study, his shoulder brushed against mine, a brief contact that sent an unexpected current through me. He paused, his eyes meeting mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. Join me, he said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. Not a command this time, but an invitation. I hesitated only a moment before following him back into the room. Ellie watched this interaction with growing horror, her eyes darting between us as understanding dawned. Oh my God, she breathed. Emma, don't tell me you've fallen for him. After one day? Are you that desperate? The accusation stung, but I kept my expression neutral as I took a seat in a leather armchair, deliberately positioning myself beside Dominic rather than my sister. Now, Dominic said, his voice taking on that steel edge again. Let's try this conversation once more, with complete honesty this time. He glanced at me, a silent question in his eyes. I nodded, giving my permission for whatever came next. In the space of a day, I had crossed a boundary I never imagined existed. I had aligned myself with a man who, by his own admission, operated outside the law, against my own sister. Yet as Ellie began to talk, reluctantly at first, then with increasing detail as she realized the futility of resistance, I felt no regret, only a strange sense of clarity, as though I were finally seeing the world as it truly was, without the filters of illusion I'd clung to for so long. And beside me sat Dominic Russo, a man of violence and power, watching me with something that looked remarkably like pride, and something deeper, more primal, that sent heat spiraling through my body despite the gravity of the situation. My world had shattered, but from the fragments, Something new was taking shape. Something dangerous, exhilarating, and undeniably real. Night had fallen by the time Ellie finished her confession. What began as reluctant admissions evolved into a flood of information. Names, dates, operations, connections between Morrison and Keyes and Castellani enterprises across the globe. With each revelation, Dominic's expression grew more thoughtful, his questions more precise. Franco had been brought in midway through, his earlier bravado replaced by a grim resignation. Unlike my sister, he offered no resistance, answering Dominic's questions with a strange mix of professional courtesy and fatalism. There was a code at work here that I didn't understand, an underworld etiquette that both men seemed to navigate instinctively. As servants of that code, Dominic's men had come and gone, recording details, making calls, occasionally providing updates in rapid Italian that I couldn't follow. Through it all, I remained silent, absorbing this new reality, watching my sister's double life unravel thread by thread. Enough, Dominic finally said, checking his watch. You've been forthcoming. That will be considered. The implication hung in the air, that their fate remained undecided, that their cooperation had bought them time, not freedom. Franco nodded once, accepting this uncertain future with dignified resignation. Ellie, however, turned to me with desperate eyes. "Emma, please," she whispered. "Don't let them—" "Take them to the safe house," Dominic instructed his men, cutting off my sister's plea. Standard protocol, but comfortable accommodations. They're family, after all. Family. The word echoed strangely in my mind. Not my family, I realized, but someone's. These people, Dominic, Franco, even my sister now, operated within structures of loyalty and obligation I was only beginning to glimpse. After they were gone, a heavy silence descended on the brownstone. Most of Dominic's men had departed with the prisoners, leaving only 2 guards stationed discreetly outside. The house felt suddenly vast, empty except for Dominic and me. He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter and offered one to me. "You did well today." I accepted the drink, the crystal cool against my palm. Did I? I just watched my sister get taken away like a criminal. "She is a criminal," he said mildly. "As am I. As is her husband. The difference is in our codes, our loyalties." He studied me over the rim of his glass. "And our honesty." I took a sip, the whiskey burning pleasantly down my throat. "What happens now? To them? To me?" Dominic moved to stand by the window, looking out at the Brooklyn night. "Franco and Ellie will be guests of my family until certain arrangements are finalized. They won't be harmed unless they attempt something foolish. Guests," I repeated skeptically. "You mean prisoners?" He turned back to me, a faint smile playing at his lips. "In my world, Emma, the line between guest and prisoner is often fluid. They betrayed a trust, violated certain understandings between our families. There are consequences for that, but not necessarily violent ones." I nodded, strangely relieved. Despite everything, Ellie was still my sister. And me? Am I a guest or a prisoner? Something shifted in his expression. A softening. A heat. "You are something else entirely." He moved closer, setting his glass aside. "You were never meant to be part of this game, yet you've played your hand with remarkable instinct. You've shown loyalty where it matters, courage when tested." His voice dropped lower. "And something more. An affinity for this life that few outsiders possess." I should have been offended by the suggestion. Instead, I felt a thrill of recognition. The past 36 hours had been the most alive I'd felt in years, perhaps ever. The danger, the shifting loyalties, the raw authenticity of emotions stripped bare by crisis. They had awakened something in me I hadn't known existed. "What are you offering me, Dominic?" I asked, meeting his gaze directly. "A choice," he replied simply. "You can return to your life, your apartment, your diner job, your solitary existence. I'll ensure your safety, provide financial security. You'll want for nothing." He paused, his dark eyes holding mine. "Or you can stay. With me." The implication was clear, the offer both terrifying and exhilarating. "As what? Your prisoner? Your mistress?" "As mine," he said, the possessiveness in his voice sending a shiver through me. "In whatever capacity feels right. I don't require definitions, Emma. Only loyalty, only truth." I set down my glass, needing clarity of thought. You barely know me. I know enough, he countered, echoing his words from our first night. I know you're stronger than circumstances have allowed you to show. I know you see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. I know you understand power, its uses, its responsibilities. He closed the distance between us, not touching me yet, but near enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. And I know that from the moment you saw me at that airport, something inside you recognized something inside me. The truth of his words resonated in my chest. There had been a recognition, hadn't there? A pulling together of two magnets, inevitable and elemental. This is insane, I whispered, more to myself than to him. People don't just fall into new lives like this. Don't they? His hand lifted to my face, fingers tracing the line of my jaw with exquisite gentleness. Sometimes, Emma, the life we're living is merely a placeholder until our real life finds us. His touch ignited something molten within me, a desire I'd never experienced with such intensity. I'd dated, had relationships that felt significant at the time, but nothing had prepared me for this visceral pull toward a man who represented everything I should fear. If I stay, I said, my voice steadier than I expected, I need to know who I'm staying with. Not just your business, your position. You, the man. Something like respect flickered in his eyes. Fair enough. He gestured toward a nearby sofa. Ask what you will. We sat facing each other, close but not touching, as Dominic Russo revealed himself to me. He spoke of his childhood in Milan, the son of a powerful family with centuries of history, of a father who ruled with calculated precision and unexpected compassion, of a mother who taught him that power without purpose was merely tyranny. He spoke of his sister Sophia, lost to cancer 5 years ago, whose death had transformed him from heir to patriarch overnight, of responsibilities inherited and expanded, of a code he lived by that valued loyalty above all else. There are things I've done that you would find difficult to accept, he admitted, no apology in his voice. Necessary things, to protect what's mine. I won't insult you by pretending otherwise. I don't need a sanitized version, I told him. Just an honest one. His smile was appreciative. Then honestly, I live in a world of shadow economies and power structures that exist parallel to the one most people inhabit. I enforce rules in spaces where law enforcement cannot or will not reach. I protect those under my care, punish those who threaten them, and maintain a balance that benefits all parties willing to respect certain boundaries. A benevolent dictator, I observed. He laughed, the sound warming something inside me, perhaps. Though I wouldn't claim benevolence as my primary motivation. What is then? Your primary motivation? His expression grew serious. Legacy. Continuity. Building something that outlasts the individual. The family business is merely a vehicle for that purpose. Family business. Such an innocuous phrase for what was clearly an empire built in shadows. And where would I fit in this legacy? I asked, the question emerging before I could reconsider it. Dominic's eyes darkened, his gaze suddenly intense. Wherever you choose. Beside me, if that's what you want. Partners, in all things. The offer took my breath away, not just for its boldness, but for the rawness behind it. This man, who commanded an underworld empire, was offering me a place at his side after knowing me for mere hours. It should have seemed absurd, even offensive. Instead, it felt like the first truly authentic opportunity I'd been offered in years. Why me? I had to ask. You could have anyone. Someone from your world, who understands the rules, the expectations. I've had those women, he said dismissively. They come with agendas, family alliances, political calculations. What I saw in you from the first moment was something rarer. Authenticity. Strength without performance. Loyalty without expectation. His hand found mine, fingers intertwining, and something else. A spark that responds to mine. The heat of his touch traveled up my arm, settling low in my belly. And if that spark burns us both? His smile was both dangerous and tender. Then we burned together. The space between us seemed to compress, charged with possibility. His free hand rose to cup my face, thumb brushing across my lower lip in a gesture both possessive and questioning. I need time, I said, barely recognizing my own voice. It's too much to process in 2 days. Instead of disappointment, Respect flashed in his eyes. Of course. I didn't build my empire on hasty decisions, Emma. I wouldn't expect you to reshape your life on one. He released me, creating space between us that felt both necessary and painful. Stay at my penthouse in the city. It's secure, private. Take a week, a month if you need it. Think about what you want, truly want, not what circumstances have conditioned you to accept. And then you decide. No pressure, no consequences either way. His expression grew serious. But understand this. If you choose to stay, it's not a temporary arrangement. Not for me. I don't share what's mine, and I don't relinquish it easily. The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed me. Instead, it sparked something primal and responsive within me. A desire to be claimed, to belong, to matter so deeply to someone that they would reshape their world to include me. And Ellie? What happens to her and Franco? That depends partially on you, he said honestly. Family ties matter in my world. If you become part of mine, your sister gains certain protections by extension. It wasn't a bribe, I realized. Just a statement of fact. The reality of how his world operated. 3 days ago, I'd been a waitress living paycheck to paycheck, invisible to the world around me. Now, I stood at a crossroads I'd never imagined possible. Offered a life of luxury, power, and danger by a man who had awakened parts of me I hadn't known existed. 1 week, I agreed finally, to decide. Dominic nodded, satisfaction evident in his eyes. He rose, extending his hand to me. Then let's begin your education. See the world I'm offering before you choose whether to accept it. I placed my hand in his, the decision feeling momentous despite its temporary nature. As his fingers closed around mine with gentle strength, I knew with sudden clarity that I was already falling, not just for this man, but for the life he represented, a life of consequence, a life where I would never again be invisible. 1 week later, I gave Dominic my answer. I never returned to my apartment, never picked up another shift at the diner. Ellie and Franco eventually earned their way back into the complex hierarchy of families, operating now under Dominic's protection and supervision. And I became what destiny had intended from the moment I mistakenly picked up a mafia boss at JFK Airport. Not a victim or a pawn, but a queen in a dangerous game I was born to play. Dominic's equal, his partner, his conscience sometimes, and always, irrevocably, his. The mistake that had seemed like the end of my world had actually been the beginning of my life.